I'm Alycea Ungaro. I am so happy to be here. I'm in New York City. I'm in my downtown studio. This is Real Pilates. We have another uptown studio and a teacher training program. And I've been a Pilates human for a really long time, since I was like 14. And I had the
Wow.
pleasure of turning 52 this year. So that's a minute. I've been in it a minute.
Yes.
Um, Still love it. I still love it. And, I'm really excited to be able to come and do this job every day. So I think
Yes.
that's probably the most, important thing about me. I like my
Yeah.
job.
That's important, right? Like I was saying to I think Elaine Ewing made a comment on my post about taking 4 days off and me saying like it kind of worked, taking that break because I do love my job and it's harder to get away from my job than it is to just like I'm not crawling into rest time. I actually
Right.
really like doing this stuff. So
Yeah.
to take 2 days off, let alone four, is the challenge to just peel yourself away, not because you're overwhelmed, but because you just like what you're doing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, yeah,
Yeah. I feel like at this stage, I don't carve out enough time off. I really have to like leave town, like take the family somewhere, but it doesn't really work for me to,
yeah,
especially in this like digital age where like, when are you off? Like, when are you off? When are you not checking your phone? When are you not on the phone? Like,
yeah.
off has become such a very like abstract thing in this day and age,
Mm,
and worse, and even worse in the time of COVID. So
right. Oh man,
I'm
yeah.
gonna have to carve it out.
It takes effort to do that. Even over the last 4 days, like I didn't put a lot of Merry Christmas posts and family pictures and stuff. Like I really just left my phone in another
Yeah.
room and just like this is work, right? Like
Yeah.
the phone is work. It's not just
Totally.
communication. So that takes some discipline. And I feel like I'm doing
Totally.
all these like shameless plugs, but the Gwen Head Pilates, the a little frozen. Oh, there. Gwen on our podcast that's coming out tomorrow, she talked a lot about that. About we use the term soul crafting. How do we take time for ourselves? How do we bring the best version of ourselves to our clients? And she shared the example of how her parents did that, and they were disciplined with that. Her mom was disciplined with it, so it's not hard. It wasn't hard for her to be able to get in the habit of taking time for herself because she had that example set.
Right.
Whereas if we have, seen just being in a situation where people have just been grinding and we see our parents grinding and our friends grinding, that we think that there's a badge of honor for being busy.
Yeah, yeah, it's a problem.
And,
And in fact, in many ways, teaching becomes like the respite, right? Because you're like,
yes,
no phone, you go out there. I don't think about anything but like your body. And it's a complete like other world. It's like old school, right? Like where you don't have technology. And
yes,
people are always shocked when I come back. I'm like, you didn't answer me. And I'm like, no, I was working. Like I'm
yeah,
teaching. Like I don't have my phone when I'm like, why is that
yeah,
strange, But it
hmm
still is.
yep, sure, crazy.
It's kind of funny.
Yeah. So now you have how many studios in New York? Two?
We have two now, and it's an existential moment like it is for everybody. Like, how many will there be at the other side of this? Do we want to be a studio brick and mortar company? Do we want to be a teacher training company exclusively? Do we want to straddle the way we have been? I don't know. I mean, I'm sort of, it's funny you said there were a couple things that came up for me in listening to Tracy talk a couple minutes ago. One of the things she said was like, it's been, last year was kind of the cool kids. And I always sort of like think about like, well, who are the cool kids? Like and I'm like, am I one of the cool kids? Cause like for me, like when I started, like it was scrappy. Like I had it in my living room so I could pay for school, and then like it worked. And so like
Right.
I kept doing it. And then like everything's kind of almost accidental. And I always say like there's not really any such thing as accidental success, but you know, but everything that we have done or I have done or has been like a series of like, well, should we do this? Does that look like, let's look behind that door. Let's peek around that. Like, what if I didn't say no? Like, what would
Yes.
yes look like? Um,
Mhm.
So like now, especially in this time, I'm like, I don't know what the next part looks like. It has to, tick a few boxes. Like, does it have longevity? Is it something I can hand
Yes.
off? Does it make me happy? Does it
Hmm.
fulfill the kind of greater good? Like,
Hmm.
what is it? What's the service of it? What's the function? But,
Yes.
but
Those are
yeah,
hard
two
questions.
studios, global teacher training. Yeah, super hard questions. And I'm glad for the pause of it this year to be able to like sit and ask the question. Sit down and just ask the question.
Great.
um, because
Hmm.
without that, like they say, like the hardest part of writing is gluing your pants to the chair. And like in many ways, that's the hardest part of being creative
Yes.
is just like make the commitment to like park yourself and like ask tough questions and like give real answers and see where you land.
Brilliant. How I'm always curious from the small business perspective of how you ended up with a bricks and mortar and a teacher training program. Because I mean, there's people who are just starting out and they have visions of grandeur of being this authority on Pilates, and there's other people who just want to, work for someone else and just make enough money to pay their bills, and both of those are success if that's your definition of success.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So for yourself, how did that journey start? Like you said, I know you kind of said it's scrappy and it kind of just fell in, in place, but like, how did that work for
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, I mean, and for the record, like I put myself in the second bucket of those two things you described. Like I
Yes.
still feel like I just want to like I want it to pay its bills. I wanted to pay its bills, and now I add to that I'd like to, create great teachers. But from the get-go,
Mhm.
teaching for me was like, oh my God, I forgot to go to college, right? Like I was a dancer and then I stopped
Yes.
dancing and I was like, okay, now what? So
Yeah.
I thought, well, I love Pilates. I like to teach. I had been teaching ballet to kids. Like maybe I'll, train to teach Pilates. So I did that. And but the intention at its core was just to go to PT school. I thought I think that's what I want to do. I want to work in a hospital. I wanted to work with spinal cord patients. Then I kind of shifted my focus a little bit. But I taught to go to school and I did that. And when I got into the program for physical therapy, I was like, okay, now I have to like make a choice because I have all these clients. I built up a practice in my apartment, and so I was like, do I let them all go because I was in
Yeah.
school full time, or do I like maybe I could get
Mhm.
a studio? But it wasn't that I wanted a studio; it was that I wanted a PT clinic. So that I thought like if
Yes.
I have this Pilates studio and it just like pays its bills until I'm out of school, which was 2 years
Yes.
at the time, I could like have a clinic, and so that would be like that'd be amazing. So at the time,
Yes.
that
It's
was
a
that was
stepping
the
stone
plan.
at the time.
Exactly. So I did, I got this little space and I knew a few teachers and we, started this little business and I would get up every morning before school and open the studio and teach a client and then leave and go to school and then come back at night and like teach a few more and then go home. And like that went on for a while. and then and then it got really big. And what happened for me at Real Pilates was really just there were two things happened. Timing was one of them. Pilates was just blowing up in New York, and that
Yes.
was the moment that I happened to like be there on the ground with an opportunity to help that along.
Yes.
Uh, and I think everyone in my like class or year or 2 years was doing the same thing. There were a ton of
Hmm.
us, me and Brooke and Jennifer and like everyone was running around just like doing everything we could to like get Pilates into the like mainstream. Um,
Yes.
so that was kind of an exciting time, but none of it was about like building this we didn't think like that back then. There was no social media. I didn't have a website. I barely had a logo. Like we had a schedule book. It was a notebook,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
we didn't think about like I'd never survive today. And I say this in all seriousness. I would never survive today because I didn't have a charitable footprint and I didn't have, swag and t-shirt. Like that just wasn't what it was for us. We just like
Yes.
put some reformers down and like taught kick-ass Pilates and we were happy.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was simple.
Yeah.
Um, so that happened. And then when I got out of school, I had this like great place, and I was like 30, and I was like, maybe I should have a baby. Like, so,
Yeah.
the PT thing just kind of got shelved, and the Pilates was working, and it allowed me to have a family, which was amazing. And, I have opened every door that's been in front of me. I've kind of opened and been like, well, what if I didn't say no? Well, what if I did take that space? You get offers all the
Yes.
time to do stuff. Or what if I,
Right.
you want to write a book? No, I don't want to write a book. Maybe I do want to write a book. Tell me more about the book. Like
Yes.
that's the way it's been. It's just a very organic, accidental, curious, but never with this idea like I'm going to have a big studio and it's going to be famous. And like that has just never been interesting to me. And I spend a fair amount of time like fostering other teachers and other studio owners, because to me, like if I create the biggest competition I can for myself out there in the world, more people will do Pilates, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the best
Yes.
byproduct.
Right.
And then like I can step away. I'm like, oh, my work is done.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I don't know. It's maybe unorthodox. I know people get in today with like a 5-year plan, and then I'm going to sell it for $1 million. Yeah, I'd like to sell my studio, but I have told my team very clearly, I want to sell it to you. So like take it and then,
Mm-hmm.
do the thing. And like, I'll be the consultant at the back end. Like I don't want to be here forever,
Right.
but I think it's got legs and it could work in a hands of a group of people like that. That sounds interesting to me.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. You've given it a thought. I was going through some of my notes the other day, like, and not really doing any kind of hardcore reflecting on 2020 and 2021, but one of the lines that I had in my little journal thing was, the opportunity of a lifetime is only good within the lifetime of the opportunity.
I like it.
And I was like, that sounds a lot like what you're saying right there, is that there's opportunities that come, but the opportunity only has this narrow lifetime. So do I take that book opportunity, or do I not? Do I open a second location, or do I not? Do I hire this person, or do I not? Yes, no. You just make your choices while
Exactly.
the opportunity is there. And
Yeah.
then it is what it is after that.
Yeah. I kind of start in some of the coaching I do, and it's something I live by, is like, whenever you think you're presented with a yes or no question, don't choose either of those things. Instead, ask, what would it look like? What would that look like? Because
Yes.
that will give you a lot more information than like there's very few things I find myself giving a hard yes or a hard no to. I'm kind of like, what would that look like? Like, if
Hmm.
it were great, if it were perfect, if it's everything you dreamed it would be, what would it look like? And if it's an
Yes.
absolute not hard no, what does that look like? And most things land in the gray, in the gray zone for me, I find, for most
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. That's a good way of looking at it. Good challenge. That'll give me pause next time an opportunity arises. Be like, what would that look like?
What would that look like?
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, and that's how we came to teacher training too. Was like I was auditioning teachers, and things were in flux, here in the city. And again, never about like, we're going to have a successful teacher training. We're going to have a big. I didn't
Hmm.
want any of that. I just wanted to be able to hire teachers for our space. And then when I thought, well, maybe we could work with other
Yes.
people, I have always gone into it with a pretty simple guideline. If is this a studio and a studio owner, if everything goes wrong, if it blows up and it doesn't work and we walk away, will we still be friends? Will we still have a good relationship? And if I can answer yes and tick some of the other boxes, then that's a host studio I want to work with. But I am not
Gotcha.
here to like pick up, like, we're not interested in that. And I thought originally it would be like 3 studios. Now I'm like, oh, look at all these great people I want to work with.
Hmm.
So that's grown in a kind of,
Yeah.
in a great way. And if some of them don't stay, or we find that that's not workable, I'm not worried about it. I'm like, it's fine. It didn't work there, but like, she's great.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
and I want to be able to
Interesting.
say that at this stage. That was something I learned late as a studio owner,
Hmm.
was how to hire well, like how to build your team well. And I don't know, why would I have known? I didn't have any experience. Like, we all
Right.
just come at this, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Exactly. That's very
but
cool. So how many studios are your host studios? That's so your model base is like host studios that do teacher training and you support them. So how many host
Yeah.
studios do you have now, and how many did you have kind of at the peak, I guess pre-COVID sort of thing?
We have 13 now, which is including us, which is the most we've ever had, dentist being one of them.
Hmm.
Um, and again, I'm not, we don't own or, there's nothing we do monetarily with these studios in terms of that relationship other than they host the teacher training program. And many of them are interested in, becoming lead trainers. Some of them are lead
Yes.
trainers so that we can kind of not have to send people out all the time. Um,
Yes.
so it's easier. I think it's a lot easier for studios to building a program is incredibly, incredibly challenging. And primary education, I think, is the hardest because
Mm.
workshops, any teacher worth their salt, I think, can put together a reasonably decent workshop. But primary training where you're actually teaching people like the basics of being a teacher, not doing
Yes.
Pilates, of teaching Pilates is a
Hmm.
very different animal and needs to be well considered and planned out. I don't It's much more work than I ever imagined it would be. It's also really fulfilling because I feel like we get to dive deep into stuff and do a real academic kind of, part of it that satisfies my other side of my brain.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. No, that's people don't like I said before with the space, it's the same thing. You want this big sexy storefront. You also want to say that I teach the masses, right? Like you
Yeah.
get into this headspace, but like it's like like Joel's comment there, like you're a great business person, and that is one way to build a solid team. You're building it so organically.
Yeah, yeah, now, but the early days are really hard. And like, there was
Mm,
a time when it was so hard to get teachers, like, you would just hire anyone, and hiring it from desperation is always bad. It's
yes.
always bad.
Yeah.
Like, never do that. And I learned again really late from like, having team members that weren't really happy to be there that I was like, I can't make you happy, dude. Like, I cannot make you happy. I could
Yes.
do everything in my power, but if you're not happy, like, that's kind of a you thing. Um,
Yes.
and so now I just look for happy people. I'm like, I can make you a great teacher, but I can't
Yes.
make you a happy
Can make
person.
that.
Like, it's just not, that's, way above my pay grade. So I learned,
Right.
like, I heard you had an interview and someone mentioned like the term letting go, being let go. And I was like, that's so funny because I've been let go. I've been fired. I was a terrible employee. I'm an awful employee. I'm not good at like taking
Really.
direction. Now I'd be better. But like as a young person, I was like, oh, I don't like
Yeah.
working for other people. And I think I related to that and like being
Yeah.
let go to go do a better thing for you.
Yes.
I mean, I know it doesn't feel like it at the time, but
I
like
know. Yeah.
I was so happy to be let go later,
Right.
thrilled to be let go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's so funny. Eh? Like those are
yeah,
those life lessons. Like you don't get a Christmas card for firing someone, but 5 years later they're
yes,
thanking you, right?
yeah. I've been there. Like I was that girl, and I was like, I can't believe you're firing me. Like I work really hard, Yeah, but you're not like happy here. And I was like, oh, I mean, okay, I guess I'm not.
I
And you're
guess
like,
I'm
I'm not
not.
happy here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
One of the girls I had on last week, Laura, the Pilates and scoliosis, she had this great line where she said, "You treat every client like they're a future teacher."
oh, that's very wise. Very
So
wise.
wise.
Yeah.
I thought that was absolutely brilliant because that's if you're doing that, then you're always recruiting, you're always educating, you're always like you're giving them that. So if they become that future teacher, they're already in that vein of being happy and being really educating their clients and all the things that are important to you. They're seeing,
Yeah.
feeling, and you don't have to actually physically teach it because they've seen it a million
Yeah.
times already, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And taking care of our clients is like, I mean, that's beyond the bread and butter. That's the piece of it that's so thrilling is really watching that transformation or having, I used to say like, if I get an aha moment, like where you see somebody and the switch just gets flipped, you're like, yes, like, and it's that
Yeah.
moment where you switch from like just that kind of basic cueing where all of a sudden your voice changes as a teacher and you're like,
Yeah.
yes.
You
And you're
hear
like, oh,
it.
it happened. It happened.
Yeah.
That sound
Yes.
kind of like of approval and excitement and just like epiphany.
Hmm.
It's always really
Yeah, no,
exciting.
absolutely. I see this comment here. I love that. I truly can relate. Having such passionate and educated teachers made me want to get certified.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
exactly. I love those moments. That's
Yeah. The
I love.
teaching
I'm
of,
such a student of leadership too, right? That like.
yes.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, no, I'm listening to this. I like that leadership. Talk about it.
Yeah, that leadership, that like when you can duplicate yourself, that is a true sign of a leader. Not that I can tell people what to do, but when people want to follow me and do not what I want them to do, but what they want to do because they see me doing what I want to do. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? You know,
Yes.
so yeah, so that's very cool for Andro. I have to say that.
When we teach, I mean, I have thought, there's so many programs. I said this in an interview the other day, a chat we had about there's so many programs. And I keep saying, like, if you do teacher training, you're a freaking hero. Like, you're a hero because it's hard work. It's a tremendous amount of dedication. There's no such thing as hourly pay for teacher training. You're literally just giving your life's blood. And it's thrilling,
Andrea,
but
thank you.
you're a hero. Like, you're a hero for that.
Yes.
But I think that we get lost. Like, I know that I get this a lot in our program is teachers come like, oh, you're going to learn like all the crazy stuff. You're going to learn the really advanced, you're going to learn the bells and what. And I'm like, that's not at my experience teaching, even though I witnessed a lot of that. My experience at Romana's and then in doing teacher training is that that list, you're going to be if you're a Pilates teacher, you're a Pilates student for life. You're going to get new exercises for the rest of your life,
Yep.
new variations, new
Yes.
cool stuff. Great for you. But the like how to teach, the spirit of teaching, the like
Hmm.
not the spirit, the how to move your body, how to like sync up with someone, how to be what the person in front of you needs, right? Because I
Yes.
always say this is the chameleon effect. Like, what do they need? Do they need a mother, a therapist, a drill sergeant? Every client needs a different facet of you, and that piece is that is the stuff I want to commit to in our teacher training. That's where I kind
Mm.
of parked our like, that's what I want to teach. And if you didn't get to hang upside down, like, okay, whatever, like, I promise you'll get that in your career. But like, you will be able to teach with this spirit that
Yes.
like I feel like Romana kind of gave to us back in the day when things were like
Mhm.
blowing up and everybody was just like out of their mind excited to do Pilates. So
Yeah, yeah.
I think we're trying our best to do that.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, if it's coming from you, like that's you'd hope that that's being caught by everyone, right? Like,
Yeah.
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 Now, how did you find Pilates originally?
Oh, I have just the most cliche story of all of them, which is like I was a young ballerina and my ankle hurt. It's actually the same exact story that Ravana had, but that's actually what happened. And they sent me to Pilates when I couldn't take class because I was at the School of American Ballet. And when you are injured, they refer you to places to get healed. I just saw the On Point series that is on Disney Plus, which was like warmed my heart because it was my alma mater. These like beautiful little dancers. Um, but they sent me to a studio called Anderson Kasakov, which is a Corolla Trier studio run by Brenda Anderson and Mary Kasakov. And so my first exposure to Pilates was through Corolla Trier's lineage. And I was there for a while. I remember just like I ran home and I told my mom it was crazy and I had done all this like Cadillac work and springs. I was 14. So I was like blown away and really excited about Pilates.
Yeah.
And that's how I originally got there. And over time, I ended up migrating because the school changed who they were sending the students to. And I ended up in, he was one of Romana's like proteges. He had like, I think he created the tower units with her. And then he sent me to Romana. So I kind of like had this path there. But once I did Pilates the first time,
Yes.
like I was in. I never didn't do Pilates. Like I didn't take time off from Pilates after that. So
Yes.
I
So
think that's a
and I
common
can
story.
imagine, yeah, it's a totally common story, and I can imagine as a 14-year-old ballet dancer, you could probably just nail every exercise right out of the box too.
Surprisingly, no. And I mean, I had very
Okay.
little weak upper body, no abs because you're like this all day. The
Yes.
hips are loose, but like you know, and like any good Pilates teacher, they were like, "What are you doing? That's terrible. What are you doing? Work from your powerhouse." You know,
Yeah.
like any good Pilates teacher, they schooled me.
They schooled you, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I never thought it was easy ever. I was always and I'm a sweater, so I was always a drippy hot mess from day one. And I was like, "This is the shiz. I love this.
Yeah.
Sign me up."
Nice. That's so funny. I love that. I love how competitive people, I think, underestimate how competitive dancers are, because every ballet dancer that's been on here has been like, it was the hardest thing ever. I loved it. I never stopped. Like, you know, like, okay, some people get hit with something and they're like, that was too hard. You'll never see me again.
Yes.
But my ballet people are just like, that killed me, and I was there every day after.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that is the sort of pedestrian part of it that I love, and I think at a young age I kind of internalized, well, if it's that freaking hard for me, I'm young, I'm mobile, I'm active, I'm, you know, semi-athletic. This must like be crazy for you know, real people. And so
Really.
I
Yeah.
was always sort of like obsessed with like the transformation that was possible, the impact
Yes.
that this would
Right.
have on normal people, you know?
Absolutely. That's so funny you say that, because that's the same for me, where I'm not coming from a dance background, but with that sense of, I can do this. How would I translate this for someone who is locked to a desk 60 hours a week?
Right. Yeah, totally. But that's the
Yeah.
fun part, and seeing people like take to it. And Ramona used to say, like, she pulled me aside, like, can't process all that, and they shouldn't process all that.
Mm,
She was like, you cherry pick your clients who want that information, and you give it to them. The rest of them, just keep them moving. Just keep them moving. And I was like, and I started to pay more
yes.
attention. I think that was really pivotal for me, because I paid more attention to how little she spoke, because she didn't run off at the mouth a lot. She spoke
Yes.
very little. Um, and then I
Mm,
was like, well, how does she use her hands? And then I spent the rest of my time like, how did she stand, and where did she put her foot, and why did that hand work? And then that for
yes.
me became much more about teaching people and less about like, even to this day, I mean, nobody's here, but like even to this day, I'm like, I don't know, the dancers, like I could take it or leave it. I like regular people. Like I like watching regular people, because the learning curve is so crazy. Like you
Yeah,
go
for
from
sure.
nothing to like, my God, it's insane. Like, and with the
Yes.
dancers, you make this like teeny tiny little change. They experience it in a beautiful way, but it's not as profound for us on the receiving end.
It's not as
So
gratifying.
totally.
Yeah. Mm,
Anyway.
that's so funny. And I lost my train of thought with it. Oh, yes, I was gonna say the it's like, you know, what you're saying about cherry picking your clients and who you're gonna give that information to. It's almost like, you know, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And what you
So,
said earlier about those clients being like becoming teachers, that plays into it too.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah. But overcorrecting and over cueing, that's it's pretty easy to do.
Yeah. And the newer teachers, like you kind of they have to go through it, right? You just
Yeah,
go through it. Just eventually they'll pare it down and make it shorter and shorter.
shorter. Right, exactly. Well, when I was going through one of my original certs, the lady who was teaching it used the term the economy of words. And
Yes.
I love that. And I heard that a lot in the personal training world before that too, where it's just like, well, in the PT world, it'd be like, okay, you're doing a boot camp. If you can teach a person this exercise in 9 seconds before the next round starts, then you got it. You don't have time for a
Yes.
ton of words. This is this, a move, and make sure they're safe and go. And then the Pilates world is like economy of words. Like you don't have to use 50,000 words to get them moving. Find the most impactful connecting words and go. And so both worlds had this economy of words piece that I started to hold on to, because, yeah, as a new teacher, you want to give them every muscle fiber that needs to be operating during the
Yeah.
exercise.
Yeah. And I think some of that goes to this, and I hate this word, but we use it a lot, is performance, right? Like if you're
Yes.
performing as a teacher,
Hmm.
who's that for?
Yes.
Who's that for? Right.
Hmm.
And I get it. But again, and this is where like my old school generation, like even though like we, you know, try to create a lot of product, we write and make videos and do all of that stuff, we weren't coming at, like, there was no social media to perform to. There wasn't a
Mhm.
lot of performance about it. So I think if you came from like a performing background, and that happens a
Yes.
lot in Pilates, you get your dancers and your theater people, and like they already kind of perform. But I often think, like, if you're reaching for tons of new exercises, if you're using extra flowery language, if you're like killing yourself to perform for your clients, you're really not doing them a service. Like, you're not. That's for you.
Right.
That's for you. And
Right.
you need to let it
Yes.
go, because it's not, they will not, we go back to, do people remember you, or they remember how you made them feel?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So,
I don't recall
focus
ever
on the
using
client.
flowery language, but that's that'd be
Maybe
funny.
not you, Martin, but
Yeah,
teachers
that's
do.
yes. I was gonna say at the same time we didn't have that social media and stuff like that. Like when Victoria was on, she used the term fangirling, where you would bounce around, especially in New York, right? Like you hear that this person's a great teacher, so I'm gonna go follow all of her classes, and you find this person, and you go to everyone in classes that person offers, and then you become like that teacher's star pupil. So that was happening even though there wasn't like cameras following you around. That was one of the things that was happening in that day too, would you not say?
Um, yeah, I don't feel like the,
Victoria's a
you mean
different
for
era, I
us?
know, but like, but still, like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. You mean like people were following us
yes,
around? Maybe, but at the same time, we were the only game
hmm
in town. Like now, like there are standout teachers because there's so much
that's
fitness in
true.
New York, and boutique fitness like didn't exist back then. Like I went to the original Lottie Burke studio as a young dancer. Like Lottie Burke was like every bar method that exists now came from this one place, Lottie
Mhm.
Burke. And it was an old Upper East Side townhouse where, like, I mean, you pretty much everyone there was over 60. And they had these like cloth sweaty mats. I mean, it was
Yeah,
kind of like a rich, scrappy place. It was the weirdest little like exercise place. And that
yes,
was like boutique fitness, right? Like it didn't exist. So
yes,
if
right,
we were teaching, if all those teachers that I mentioned earlier, like if we were running around like and people were fangirling, it was literally because you couldn't get Pilates other than like we were the only game in town at that point. And at
yes,
some point, and like Chelsea Piers had opened down here, it's massive. There were these enormous classes, 70, 80 people with a headset, like we were Madonna or something. I mean, the
Whew.
whole thing was just, it was crazy. And I don't think we understood really the impact we were having. We were just trying to, put food on the table. It was really that
Right,
simple.
yeah,
We were excited about it, but
mhm.
it was just this moment in time where like everything was, Pilates growing, and
Yes,
I'm so grateful for that. And if I consider one success that is the most
hmm
profound, is probably how many teachers and studios have come through having started here, or that we've been part of their journey, and then they've gone on and
yes,
opened their own studio. I know it's nearly 200 studios at least on the planet exist, like after having the teacher having come through
yes,
here. And I mean, whether they left on great terms or terrible terms, I consider that a huge success because they stayed with Pilates, they opened a studio, they brought
hmm
Pilates to other people, and we were a little piece of that.
That's no, that's a huge win. And I remember like my son, kind of a similar story. My son was to take playing soccer when he was like 13, 14, and he was on this rep team, and he found it really difficult and wanted to quit. And in sitting down with the coach and my son, like, at first we're upset because, we didn't want him to stop playing, but then we also wanted to respect his wishes. And the coach was like, as long as you keep your passion for soccer, I'm totally fine with you walking away from it now. Then instead of you staying with it and then hating soccer and never playing soccer again. And I think it's the same with Pilates. They may not like you personally, they may not like me, but as long as you stay with your Pilates,
Yeah.
like you can keep going with that. And as long as people are continuing to grow and fall in love with Pilates and movement and stuff like that, like all the personal stuff can kind of just fall by the wayside. And let's just keep getting people in love with movement, in love with this Pilates journey.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of, and it's an interesting time now too. Like I see, and this is where I'm like the social media part that my generation wasn't so comfortable with. is playing such a huge part. And there are wins, but there are also these like crazy, I mean, our industry has seen some crazy stuff happen on social media recently,
Yes.
that was really like the dark side of humanity, of social media, of and brought to surface. I was just like, it's scary in a lot of ways. And I'm like, I know there are uncomfortable conversations to be had in every industry, but
Yes.
some of this stuff is like, I, you know, I'm not sure where to start in many ways when we're talking about like the dark side of Pilates or like the
Mhm.
unspoken things in Pilates. I'm definitely going to that panel tonight, but
Oh, yes, yes.
some of these conversations for someone like me who's been here since the 80s, um, feels like, it does this, right? Like we have these peaks
Yes.
and valleys. Some of these
Hmm.
conversations surface and then go away or get pushed
Hmm.
away, or there's like progress made. Um, but that but now things can get really angry,
Yes.
and I'm glad for that. Like that part I'm glad for, because you can't tiptoe around all of this, and real change is going to come with some
Hmm.
emotion tethered to it. But
Yes.
it's just hard to see ahead. I kind of want to be on the like, where are we in the curve, right?
Yes.
Are we
Yes.
here? Are we down? Like where?
Yes. Is it
And
skull
how
going
do?
down? Is it on the uptick
Yeah,
or
I
yes?
I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know.
That's well, and if we can speak about, I mean, someone's putting here. Let's get to a couple of these comments first of all. So,
Yeah.
the warm fuzzy comment from Joel, you were definitely part of my journey. And Jane just above that, love Pilates, long live Joseph Pilates. Um, and then Jane also saying dark side. Well,
Mm.
I had Victoria on last week, so Pilates snob,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
we had a. Did you watch any of that conversation?
I watched a little bit, and I just saw it after, but I didn't see the whole thing. But I'm
Okay.
interested. Tell me.
Yeah, so we had a good conversation, and we were talking about her WTF Wednesdays and how she made her pivot on that, and the accusations of it being bullying, and then how she's kind of changed her message, and she's not trying to police the internet anymore, that sort of thing. So there's a lot. I thought it was a really good, safe place conversation. But that's an example of where people interpret things as being bullying, and now there's like zero tolerance for that anymore. Whereas before, there was an era of you could say that, and people would be like, "Yeah, tell them that's true." And now it's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! That actually isn't as inclusive as we want this whole space to be, right?"
Right. Right. Absolutely.
So there's that, and then we see, when it comes to this racial awakening that we're going through. I've been saying from time that this Pilates community that we're a part of, I believe in many ways is leading the charge in affecting change, because we have such a small community, and then the voices are being heard and voices are being amplified, and we're seeing things like this town hall where um, changes are being made. And we see, on the Pilates Method Alliance, like they have board members who are more representative of our greater community.
Yep.
All of these things happen, and I say that this is a microcosmic example of what's happening in the larger world. People
Yeah.
are realizing that these things are wrong. People are realizing that people with my skin tone actually are really smart and should be presenting at conferences and should be on the cover of magazines and should be lead master trainers and all these different things, and not just, what I mean? Like, so all of these things I think are happening. And if we're on this up and down curve, I have no clue where we are, but I'd like to think
Mhm.
that it's on the uptick,
I
because
hope
there's
so.
there's more awareness of it. There's pivots that people are making, and more voices being heard, and voices are being amplified by, I think of people like Leslie Logan or Jenna
Mhm.
Zaffino or Jessica Vlant. So she's doing Momentum Fest. And then
Mhm.
the people that you choose to be there aren't the same just regular superstar faces in the Pilates world. There's
Right.
lesser known superheroes that are doing amazing work that now have a voice, because people like Jessica, for example, are amplifying those voices, giving them a platform, giving them a stage, a virtual
Yeah.
stage.
Yeah.
So I see all these things happening, and that gives me hope.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I wrote a letter to the PMA, has to be 4 or 5 years ago, for a presenter, for a young presenter. And I kind of, I said, you know what, like it's the same people all the time, and I'm one of them. But I'm like, there are brilliant teachers out here doing incredible work, like grinding it out every day, like teaching clients, teaching teachers. Like you can't, you have to make space for them. Like it's not
Yes.
okay to just pick people according to how many followers they have on you. Like
Hmm.
where there have to be other criteria also. Like, and
Right.
if it were really truly blind, like really truly blind, and the criteria, the metrics for success were measured according to like universals, the entire industry and, by extension, the world would look very different. It would
Yes.
look very different.
Right. Which
So,
is, it's funny. That's a double-edged sword for what you were saying earlier, though, too, Alycea. Because, like, if you think about it, when everyone was just riding this wave of Pilates being popular and growing, and everyone's excited about it. Well, I guess, do you want to talk about Sean Gallagher? Do we go there? Because I mean, there's just one of those things where you get to this place where someone has to monopolize it, or
hmm,
everyone organically lets it grow, and then
right.
you know what I mean. So does
Yeah,
someone,
yeah.
so you can talk
I,
about Sean Gallagher, but I think the PMA is the same thing where you can't wrangle the whole world into one place and expect
you
everyone's gonna be
can't.
like, "Yay, let's do this," right?
You can't. You can't. It's what I say about this, the teacher training too. I'm like, I don't want to be the biggest or the only, because I think we all make each other better. Like, I believe there ought to be lots and lots of great smaller teacher training programs. And I just believe that. Like,
Yes.
that's what I hold dear.
Yeah.
But in terms of like our community like being better, setting the stage, I think you're right, there's a lot of opportunity here. There's also, this tends to be not, I'm not like dissing on the like greater fitness community, but Pilates people are really smart. Like this is a
Yes.
very like, it's a very sort of cerebral group of fitness people. Like we tend to absorb a lot of education, we study a lot, we read a lot, we bring stuff in,
Yeah.
we're like hungry for knowledge.
Hmm.
So I think we're in a way really well positioned to like make
Yes.
the tent bigger. But it has been, since I've been here, it's been very lily white, very, very lily white. And
Hmm.
that has been, just the name of the game for the longest. And
Yeah.
I'm a born and bred New Yorker. I grew up in the projects in Brooklyn. So I, for one, am excited to see a little, a
Hmm.
little bit more change here because it's been too long.
Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah, I think we're going in the right direction. And it is support, amplify, and connect, right? Like
Yeah.
someone said that on here months ago, and I've run with that because that if we're supporting those who are doing the work, if you have some power, influence, or voice, you amplify those who are trying to get heard, and you connect with people, and then you lock arms with them. You
Yeah.
support those people, right? So the more that happens, the more that we run that play, I think that we're going to start to
Yeah.
see more good things happening.
I like that. That's a meme. What, support, connect,
And
amplify, or the other way? Support.
support, amplify, and connect. I'll
I
send.
like
My
it.
wife made a meme out of that because
Mm.
she was like, that was
Oh,
like, yeah,
spot on.
yeah, it was so spot on. But yeah, there's so many good things are happening. So many good things are happening.
Yeah.
I sent you the message earlier just to think about like what is your message for your people? Obviously, the room is empty right now, but what's the message that you're sending to your people virtually, or when you get a chance to connect with people? How are we keeping everyone kind of engaged and connected?
Yeah. I think it was a good question. I was like, that's a good question. You know, I always tell our clients like exercise by definition is rehearsal for an emergency or a crisis, right? Like that's the point of it. Like you
Yes.
tax your heart, you stress your body so that if there is a stress situation, a bear's chasing you, you can run. Or you have a heart attack, your body's like, wait, I've been here before because I did that on the treadmill. So by design,
Right.
like exercise is a rehearsal for a crisis. And
Yes.
we're in a crisis. And
Hmm.
lucky for you,
Right.
you are prepared because you have been doing the hard work. But if you haven't, it's not too late to start because honestly, it's the only thing we can do to really truly prepare in at every level, the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, the mental, like every single preparation, and we need all of it. The ability to sit still, the ability to stop and turn off, like you said earlier, the ability to like keep going if you need to, all of which we have needed so much in this time. And if you're in the business, the ability to stop and the ability to keep going and the ability to navigate between those two things at a moment's notice has been the gift of Pilates, but it's also demonstrating the work that we've done by having done Pilates consistently. So I hope that the work serves us, and also, that we're able to take from it what we need, but also that we keep it up.
Yes. Nice. I see the comment there. It's so important. Rehearsal for crisis. So true. Survival, exercise. Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's the line. That is the line. That's so good. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Martin.
That was like such a fast 50 minutes.
I know. I'm upset. I need more. I hope I get to meet you. I would like our borders closed, which is like an awful symbol, but like that'd be amazing if that doesn't happen anymore. So it'd be nice to connect for real at some point.
I'm sure we will. Like, you're so close. You're like a 7-hour drive away. That's nothing.
We'll get up there too.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. I will send you the replay later. It's so good.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks, you too. All right. Thank you, everyone. Exercise is a rehearsal for